Hey, what's going on? I am Matt O'Leary back with another video, and today I want to talk about my top 5 cut candidates for the New York Jets. I'm a little bit tired of talking about quarterbacks, and I figured, you know what, maybe some other people are too. I know we have to talk about it. It's a huge storyline, but let's take a break and instead take a look to free agency, which is coming pretty soon. Like, free agency is not that far off. Obviously, the quarterback decision probably has to happen before you reach that point, but I wanted to look at 5 guys who I think could be cut for the New York Jets this year and what they would save against the cap. Let's get it rolling. We'll start today with Corey Davis. To me, seems like the most likely cut candidate on the New York Jets. If he was to get cut, it would free up $10.5 million in cap space. Unfortunately, when he was signed, he was kind of brought in to be a good, solid number 2. And at times he was, but inconsistencies, man, and injuries, the 2 biggest things with him, staying on the actual football field and inconsistencies. There were a ton, especially early on, both years, early on in 2021 and then early on again in 2022, especially when Zach Wilson came back, because Zach and Corey had that connection. Thinking of the Pittsburgh game, for example, there were some really clutch moments and some really clutch catches. Heck, even in the Mike White game against the Vikings, Corey Davis had a huge catch in that one. But he only played 9 games in 2021, and then this past year he played 13 games. So he missed 4 games this year, and he missed 8 games the year before that. And unfortunately, this is not an uncommon occurrence. Even back to his days in Tennessee, he was always banged up and missing time. Drops, penalties, inconsistencies, all 3 of those reasons are big reasons to why you'd free up that $10.5 million. You could find a wide receiver 2 or 3 replacement in free agency and someone like Allen Lazard or Jacoby Myers. Maybe they take a bigger swing on a DeAndre Hopkins. I don't think that's very likely, nor do I think that's probably the right call. A middle tier free agent wide receiver is what I would be looking for. If it were up to me, or even in the mid rounds of the NFL draft, you could theoretically do that as well. But unfortunately, not the player they thought they were getting when he was signed before the 2021 season. Next up, Braden Mann. Oh my goodness gracious. Braden Mann would free up $1.01 million. You have to move on from him. He was a draft pick in 2020. Why they spent a 6th round pick on a punter, I'm still not exactly sure. Did not like the idea then. And he had an okay rookie season, made a nice tackle that ended up costing them Trevor Lawrence. But then has cost them multiple games since then. Multiple games, especially this year. Big ones against the Detroit Lions. He's a huge reason why they lost that game. The punt in the New England game was abysmal. Too many shanks, too many line drive punts. He doesn't punt with any hang time, so the punt team can't run down the field and make a play. He just leaves his team out to dry too many times. Coffin corner. Learn how to coffin corner. That would be my advice to Braden Mann while he's looking for a new team, because you cannot possibly run this back with him for a 4th season. That's it. He got 3 years. Should have been replaced, or Morstead should have stayed last year in 2021 when our guy Braden Mann went down with injury. Morstead was solid. He was. He came in and played well, and then you cut him and he goes to a division rival in the Miami Dolphins. Now he's a free agent. Maybe you right the wrong and bring him in. Stop drafting punters. You could sign a UDFA punter. You could sign a free agent punter, but do not draft punters, especially ones who aren't very good. Unfortunately, Braden Mann was a big swing and a miss. Free up that money. Move on. It's long overdue. The next guy on my cut list is Carl Lawson. He would free up $15.4 million, which is pretty much the only reason why he's on this list. He is also a candidate of all these guys. He probably is the most likely to be restructured on this list over being cut, but there is certainly a world where Carl Lawson gets cut. He missed the entire 2021 season due to injury. He played in 2022, had 7 sacks and 26 pressures, which is okay, but it's not $15 million a year player worthy. We did find out after the season that he was kind of playing through an injury, or not necessarily playing through an injury, but he had a second surgery on his Achilles in the offseason. So I don't know if it was, okay, maybe next year, like he gets back to the player everyone thought he was going to be because he had another year to recover, or if you're just never going to be the same again after the Achilles. It's a tough call to make. Again, I really like Carl Lawson. I think he's a solid player, But if you were to move on from him, that would free up reps for guys like Jermaine Johnson, Bryce Huff, and Michael Clemens. All three of those guys I think you eventually want to get on the football field. Huff is one of the most efficient pass rushers in the NFL and really only played a limited role with this team because of the rotation and just the amount of depth that they had. It might be time to give Huff some more reps. And Jermaine Johnson was a first-round pick. You want him to eventually play more. I thought he was good as a rotational guy. Clemens was also pretty good as a rotational guy as a rookie. Both those guys, or all three of those guys, really deserve more playing time. The easiest path to that is probably moving on from Carl Lawson. Next up is a former fan favorite, Braxton Berrios. He is going to be very costly if he were to stick on the roster, but if you did cut him instead, it would free up $5 million, which could be better allocated elsewhere. As a receiver, just not very effective. 145 yards receiving, no touchdowns. He had a terrible drop against the Minnesota Vikings that would have completely changed that game and maybe won the game for the New York Jets. Instead, it was a drop. And then as a returner, just was not very good. He didn't trust himself. He was fair catching everything. There were times where he was letting balls bounce inside the 10-yard line and getting pinned back. Like, he had no clue. He lost all confidence of decision-making, it felt like, this year, whether to let the ball bounce and go into the end zone or to field it and fair catch it or to field it and run. It just seemed like whatever he decided to do was the incorrect decision, unfortunately. He was a all-pro last year and got a really nice contract because of it, but just not nearly worth that money. And you can find production elsewhere. For instance, Zonovan Knight, who is going to cost you under $1 million next year, can return kicks and punts and give you, I would say, at least 75% the value of a good Braxton Berrios, but he can't be worse than what we saw from Braxton as a returner this year. So unfortunately, Braxton is packing his bags. He is the fourth guy getting cut. My fifth and final candidate for my top 5 is Jordan Whitehead, which would free up $7.25 million. Whitehead was a free agent signing this past offseason. He got a short-term deal, and for not a ton of money, but I think Jet fans were expecting a lot more out of this guy, and he was a missed tackle machine. 17 missed tackles for Jordan Whitehead this past year. They need to upgrade this position badly at both spots, in free safety and strong safety. Jordan Whitehead was your strong safety. Free safety was LaMarcus Joyner. Joyner's a UFA. Let him walk or retire, whatever the case may be. You cannot bring back LaMarcus Joyner. And for Jordan Whitehead, honestly, you could move on. You could free up that $7 million and spend it elsewhere and improve that position either in free agency or the draft or both. But I think they really need to remake that safety room a little bit. And Jordan Whitehead just misses way too many tackles for my liking. So he is our 5th candidate. Let me know who makes your list as your top 5 cut candidates for the New York Jets. Is there someone that I left off? Is there someone on this list that you would not cut? Let's discuss below in the comments. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I am Matt O'Leary, and I will talk to you next time.